Okay, so welcome everyone to CSEdX Day 1, Session 3.1. So it's really fantastic to have you all in this session. We have 4 presenters and a whole group Q&A at the end. So I wanted to start by paying my respects to the First Nations elders past, present and emerging across the many lands where Charles Sturt University campuses, students and staff are located. In particular, I acknowledge the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundagara and Biripi people, and I'm on the Biripi lands today. So I'd particularly like to acknowledge how grateful I am to be on Biripi land. I also want to pay my respects to any First Nations colleagues in this session today. Just realised I haven't slide. I did not move. So we have 4 presenters today. And so we're going to move through. Each presenter has 10 minutes and will be given a 1-minute notification when they've got 1 minute to go. And we're not going to have any questions until the end. So we'll have a Q&A session. So you can, if you can keep your questions in your mind, maybe jot them down on a piece of paper, and then you can ask your questions at the end. So our first presenter, now tell me if I'm saying this wrong, it's Ashad Kabir.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
That's correct. Oh, good. I got it right. Welcome, Ashad. I'll stop sharing so that you can share your slides. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Fabulous.
Can you see my screen okay? Okay, all good. Okay, thanks, Karen, for the introduction. Okay, hi, everyone. I'm Ashad Kabir. I'm with the School of Computing, Maths and Engineering. My topic is enhancing student engagement and learning experience in online delivery through competition-based learning. In particularly today, I'll talk about a case study of computer programming subject using an innovative tool, HackerRank. So online education presents distinct challenges for regional universities, where students often face additional barriers such as limited access to campus resources and a greater reliance on asynchronous learning. So these challenges are particularly pronounced in analytical and algorithmic computer programming subjects such as data structures, which is a 3rd-year subject in the Bachelor of Information Technology program. The subject experience survey score for data structure subject initially reflected these difficulties with a 72% score, SUS score, indicating that traditional online teaching methods were not sufficiently engaging, and recognizing the need for innovative approaches and tailored to the unique context of regional university. And it also reflects from the subject progression rate, very low progression rate, and limited engagement. So this presentation explores the effectiveness of competition-based learning in enhancing engagement and learning experience in computer programming subject delivered online. By integrating HackerRank, which is a coding and assessment platform widely used in the industry for hiring programmers, and this study seeks to demonstrate how competition can foster a collaborative and motivating learning environment, leading to a significant improvements in student satisfaction and performance. So the methods here include incorporating HackerRank in the subject's weekly activities. So what I did, I changed the weekly activities in the form of a competition. So which basically motivates students to do the activities or complete the activities in the form of like a gamification. So weekly programming challenges were redesigned to correspond with the topics covered in the subject and hosted in the HackerRank. So which provided automatic evaluation and real-time feedback and ranking on a leaderboard. So student can see their ranking based on how quickly they solved the problem and how much time they attempted with the wrong submission. Because HackerRank has a capacity internally to evaluate the submission automatically and instantly give the feedback. And also it counts the number of submissions students are making and how much time they are taking to do the submission. Based on that, they rank all the participants. So it's a form of competition. So like a gamification. So this platform's immediate feedback also allowed students to iteratively refine their understanding of complex concepts. And I'm the first to use this tool for teaching at Charleston University. Let me quickly give you a demo how the HackerRank look like. So here I have a screenshot, but I can show you the real thing. So I hope you can see my screen as a browser. Is the browser visible? Am I right? No? You'd not be looking in my browser? Okay, maybe I stop share and.
Oh, we were.
It
We
was
could
just
see your
delayed.
screen.
Okay. Are you looking the HackerRank website? Is this correct? Yep. Okay. So this is the HackerRank website. It's the hackerrank.com and is a free up to certain extent. And this website basically, if you can see that website, if you go to the login, they have two options for companies, that is for industries, which they use for interviewing, hiring the programmers, and for developers like those who will be hired. They can also go in this website, create an account, then do a lot of practices, coding practices, and prepare for skill set, and they're prepared interviews and get hired for within that. So in my case, I use this platform and I get a admin privilege for this platform by contacting with that system. So I create a contest for each week. I create a contest for my students. So if you hit the enter contest, the student hit the enter contest, as soon as they hit that, the time counts. And if you hit that, and I set up a challenges, for example, 4 challenges here, each of the programming problem, they can go and they can do the problem. So if you go there, this describes what is the problem, and this is the environment when they do the solutions, and then they submit the code. And once they submit it, it automatically compile to the go to the server and compile against the lots of test cases. And based on the submission, they will able to see immediately is accepted and what is the score they get. And in the leaderboard, they can go and see all the students and what are the score they get and how much time they spend or took to, and based on that, they do the ranking of each of the students automatically. And also it has a discussion forum where the students can ask questions and they can interact. So it enables peer-to-peer interactions, or I can jump on and also as an administrator, I can answer the students' questions as well. So this is a brief about HackerRank system. So the results. So if you see my results over, so I taught this subject in 2017. First, I taught this subject, and my PPR score was 72.53, which is the percentage of positive response from SUS score. And from 2018, I incorporated this HackerRank, and since now, as you can see, the PPR has been significantly improved since now, and it has been persistently showing a good result over the time. And as also it can be, you can see the comparison with the school average, faculty and university average over the time. And progression rate also increased very well. So average, the progression rate for this subject is above 90%. Okay, so effectiveness of HackerRank also can be demonstrated through the students' feedback in the subject experience survey. So one of the question students' feedback was like this. So here I incorporated few of them. So one of the students saying, I wished more programming subject utilize this. And HackerRank was a great place for me to implement what I have learned. HackerRank was a great helps ensure that I understood the algorithms. The HackerRank challenges help to use the learning in real world problems. And HackerRank weekly activities was also fun and enjoyable and way to practice coding from the weekly topics. On the right-hand side, you can see the word cloud, which all the comments related to HackerRank representing in the word cloud based on the frequency of the words. And I also apply this HackerRank to the other subject in my postgrad subject, and which is also shows. So 2016, I have been given teach this subject. And without HackerRank, it was 70.37 PPR score in 2016 and 2017. When I incorporate the HackerRank to that subject, it goes up to 96%. And since then, other colleagues are teaching this subject, and most of them, their PPR score is up from 66 to maximum 86%. So I put just highest one so far in this subject, PPR score. Okay, in terms of recognition, this innovative approach actually leads to several recognition for me. And started 2019, I got the first place in Teaching Excellence Award, and 2022 Executive Dean Award, and 2023 Change One Thing Award, and also I got a fellowship from Higher Education Advanced HE. Also 2023, I got a Global Open Learning Global Innovation Award. I recognized as a finalist, and this also leads to me to complete my higher education teaching certificate from Harvard. Thank you. Hope I'm finished on time.
Yeah. Just here, that was a really interesting presentation. And as I said, we're not doing questions until the end. We'll do them all together. So our next presenter is Kim Oliver. With do paramedic students consider regionality when exploring service delivery?
Right, I'll just share my screen. And I'll just give me a minute to get this sorted. Oh, there it is. Right, can you see that now? Presentation, yeah. Right, thank you, Karen, for introducing me. So, as she says, this presentation looks at paramedic students, whether they consider regionality when exploring service delivery. I'm a lecturer with the School of Nursing, Paramedicine and Health Sciences. So this is how this topic came about, really. So first of all, we need to look at what regionality means and the definition. And it's anything outside the major cities, outside of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide and Canberra. Now, this is really important because we know that over 10 million people, around 40% of the nation's population, live in regional Australia. So I did a manual review of 193 submissions for an undergraduate paramedic subject, and he highlighted that only 14 submissions discuss regionality, rural or remote locations within their submissions. So that's only 7.25% of the students, which is surprising to me with such a large cohort. I noted that when I looked at them, that those students that lived in the CBD discussed challenges from a metro perspective without considering if the same challenges was faced by those in the regional areas. So I delved further, and the vast majority of students focused on 4 main themes. But those who focused on the regions also reported the same type of issue, but in a different context to the metro students. For example, if we look at bed blocking, it was discussed from a rural perspective in relation to waiting with the patient until a doctor arrived, or waiting for a senior member of staff to arrive, who they could hand the patient over to. So the same issue was actually identified by students in the metro submissions, but they discussed bed blocking due to staff not being able to accept the patient due to a lack of bed availability. So as you can see, it was the same issue that they was talking about, this bed blocking, but they looked at it in different contexts. It became clear when I looked at the submissions that students lacked insight into the challenges by paramedics and other members of the multidisciplinary team outside of their own geographical location. But this gap in the students' knowledge base, we need to address this because no member of the healthcare profession works in silo. We work as part of a larger team, sometimes working across borders, where having an understanding of the challenges that other members face is vitally important, especially because we want to sustain a good working relationship. And we also need to ensure that we have effective patient and family-centred care. So we need to understand what is happening with our partners that are in the regions, especially if we are working across these borders. We need to actually understand what the challenges that they face. Often in rural and remote areas, we'll work with an increased numbers of volunteers, such as, I know this happens in Queensland or elsewhere in Australia. I'm actually located in Perth, and this happens quite often, that we'll work with volunteers. So it's not uncommon for it not to be 2 paramedics working as a crew. Rather, it could be a paramedic and 1 volunteer, or it could be a crew of volunteers and a community paramedic. So students did not seem to understand or consider at this point that this was challenging unless there was a student paramedic from one of these geographical locations. So the content of the subject needs to reflect both the metro students and the metro issues along with the regional areas as well. It needs to be equal, as we have students from all locations. And just as nursing, paramedics is the same, it's a fluid profession now. Once qualified, students may move to one of these locations at some point in their career. So if we prepare the students at this stage in their training, it's going to benefit them long term. So the question is really, how do we address the gap in the students' knowledge? A pedagogical approach is needed by the subject conveners, as we should be encouraging students to explore topics from numerous perspectives, using an inquiry-based instruction and thought-provoking questions. I feel this is ideally done during tutorials, as this enables students to interact with each other, acknowledge their different perspectives and all their diversities, and which works well towards filling the void in their own personal knowledge base, while also promoting a rational inquiry which is effective in nurturing a positive learning outcome. This real-world learning encompasses linking with industry partners, such as having guest speakers talking about the subject content from their perspective. For example, having paramedics and other members of the multidisciplinary team, such as doctors, nurses, even police officers, deliver the tutorial content. Discussing the content from their perspective will broaden the students' knowledge base and their understanding, but also hopefully engagement as well. That should increase. I think it's worth pointing out that the focus of this subject is communication and teamwork and working together. So it's appropriate to use these guest speakers to facilitate the students' learning, and it should be encouraged throughout the whole of the curriculum. This approach also challenges issues of urban-centric bias, which may have inadvertently crept into the undergrad curriculum. This model could serve as a valid model for other healthcare disciplines and could be argued as being an example of disruptive innovation, as it is breaking down geographical barriers and fostering a greater engagement with team members in the regions, and leading to a seamless service delivery and an educational resource. The proposed changes to teaching and learning strategies will be captured and measured as part of a continuous improvement cycle, utilising a written questionnaire at the end of the semester. And we'll ask students if their perceptions of regional, remote and rural working, if it's changed following the guest speakers' sessions. So to conclude this presentation, radical re-imaging starts with a few small steps. This initiative is a small change that could lead to the transformation of learning for our healthcare students to ensure they are work ready and they have a wealth of knowledge. and this should ease their transitions into their careers, wherever that may take them. And those are the references that's been used. Thank you. I'll just share it.
Force is one of my passion areas, so I was fascinated by that one.
Good.
So our next presenter is Donna Bridges, teaching sociology, improving engagement and achieving transformative learning. Welcome.
You're on now, Donna.
Okay, so it's showing for you. You just need to, right, terrific.
You can just see the presenter view right now.
Yeah, how's that? Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm Donna Bridges, presenting about the redevelopment of a sociology subject, and you can see the list of my team there, but I won't whiz through it because of time restraints. So this paper reports on the redevelopment of understanding the social world, which is a largely service-taught sociology subject, meaning that we teach it in other disciplines. And sociology often occurs within other disciplines. So we are challenged to make sure that that content and the way that we teach is going to resonate across varieties of degree programs and also remains relevant across quite a lot of future professions for students. So we teach this subject face-to-face and online across all CSU campuses and all 3 sessions, approximately 700 students a year. So it's an important subject to the sociology discipline at CSU and to our school. And when we were doing the redevelopment, we were aware that it was occurring in a regional and multi-campus context. So we did focus on that. So a lot of the problem with service teaching sociology is that this is a particular discipline that's focused on socio-cultural and political understandings of inequality, power, privilege, social justice. So this, it also problematizes the neoliberal context, and that includes universities. So sociologists are thinking about these kinds of issues all the time. And this can be quite confronting for students, and their professional bodies want them to study sociology, but they often don't understand why they have to study sociology. So we needed in the redevelopment to make the subject more relevant to them, because of course, if they believe it's relevant, they're going to be more engaged. And engagement, of course, has a direct correlation to their performance and their outcomes. So we wanted to increase engagement and relevance by creating a vibrantly engaged learning community where critical thinking was enhanced. So we had this big focus on critical thinking. We used a sociological framework, the sociological imagination, to teach critical thinking. We introduced greater flexibility in assessment and topic choice so that students could make sure that what they were studying was relevant to their degree program and their future profession. We used a lot of media in our teaching methods and also in assessment to make sure we were connected to real world topical social events and phenomena. And that wasn't just news type media. We looked at movies and we looked at imagery from the social world as well. We didn't compromise the social justice and social change frameworks, so we remained political in that sense. We also focused on creating a learning community. So we increased peer learning and we increased team teaching techniques. So we started to do team teaching lectures where all the lecturers from all the different campuses come to the lecture every week, and different people run the lecture, but we're all there and we make it an open discussion as well. So the study that I'm talking about evaluated the redevelopment. We interrogated the student experience surveys 3 years prior to the redevelopment and 3 years afterwards. And of course, we wanted to determine evidence of increases in that critical thinking, generally student engagement, student understanding about relevance. And we became quite interested during our cooperative inquiry of this study about transformative learning. So cooperative inquiry is a democratic participatory process where the researchers are the researchers, but they're also the participants of the research. So we met very regularly and discussed the research, and we became interested in transformative learning because we started noticing that students were doing that. And transformative learning is when people have profound and meaningful changes in their attitudes and perceptions, and in this case, of the social world. So we did retrospective data mining, basically, and we focused on those questions in the SES. What about this subject did you find most helpful? And what about this subject did you find least helpful? And of course, we did look at the overall percentage points, but we found the qualitative data much more meaningful. And we did the usual, developing coding frames, thematic analysis in qualitative research is quite common. We determined central themes in this way, and we found that a focus on critical thinking via the sociological imagination did increase the student understanding of the relevance of sociology to their degrees and to their future professions. So it did enhance engagement. We found that this flexibility and self-direction in assessment, as well as the team teaching and peer learning, did also increase engagement and understanding of relevance and increase critical thinking. And that the combination of these pedagogies did lead some students to transformative learning experiences. So with finding one, we did notice post-development that many students talked about how relevant the subject was to them in terms of their understanding of the social world, but also in terms of the work that they were doing or the work that they want to do when they get their degrees, and also about their particular degree programs. So they were starting to be able to make that link, whereas we found pre-development, they weren't making the link as well. As far as flexibility and self-direction in the assignments, we found that they talked a lot about freedom and passion and that it was fun to do the assignments. And I think earlier in the session, Sarah was saying that when we measure engagement, we do it quite differently to how students do it. If a student is engaged, they're engaged because they feel passionate about this stuff. They feel like they're learning. They feel like their learning is fun. When we measure engagement, we tend to be measuring how often they open interact and how often they'll go to a lecture, whether or not they complete the subject. So we found that they were definitely more engaged on the level that students count. So again, the students saying it's about freedom and passion, and they appreciated the self-directed learning and were able to be more reflective. They very much appreciated having different presenters, different lecturers. They found that quite a dynamic process where they could see other people's perspectives and experiences. And they felt that they learned more through hearing from their peers in class and having that ability to do that. And that's in classes, it's also in forums, it's also in Padlets, and in assessment as well. We had a peer learning component to the first assessment. And then that enabled transformative learning. This student saying it challenged them to, and being challenged is part of transformative learning. So the student was challenged, the student saying it changed their way of thinking, helped them understand. This student describes it as an awakening. So the redevelopment was successful. We had positive findings. Students who participate benefit. But the limitations are that participating in the SES is low, and also class attendance, face-to-face and online, is increasingly low. And students participating in module activities, completing readings, lecture recordings, and so on is also increasingly, what's getting lower as time goes on. So those who are engaging are really positive, and those who aren't, of course, we don't hear from them, and we know that they're not participating, and we know that from Interact Analytics, not so much from Brightspace, because we've been told that their analytics are unreliable. So looking at the implications of that information is that the neoliberal corporatization of the university, which is academic capitalism, making economically rationalized decisions, means that we are also challenged by university policy that can be very difficult to overcome. So reduced time for teaching, reduced assessment, and no mandatory assessment, no mandatory attendance. You know, we can add lots of things there about big subjects and having markers that aren't engaged in the subject, and so on. These are all economically rationalized decisions by the university, and they can diminish student engagement, create ambiguity around expectations for a student that's starting studying, and because they believe that it's going to be entirely flexible and they can do it whatever, and then they get to assessment time and they realize that, hey, this is really hard and I've already missed the first 4 weeks. And this reduces their investment in learning, and I think we're more likely to lose them at that point. And we are writing a paper about this at the moment, so we've got it very well grounded in the literature. And I conclude on those points as well. The study has found that these pedagogies improve understandings of relevance and engagement, lead to transformative learning. However, many may not experience it, and therefore we are constrained by the neoliberal university. And thank you, I'm finished.
Thank you so much, Donna. That was really interesting. And we will have lots of questions about the neoliberal university, I am sure, at the end. So our next presenter is Janelle Hill, who's presenting on mathematics and English teachers' views of and pedagogical strategies with iPads, a case study.
Hello to everybody. Can you see my screen? Yeah, wonderful. So my name's Janelle. I'm a lecturer in mathematics education in the School of Education, and I'll be talking about a small part of a larger study focusing on mathematics and English teachers' views and pedagogical strategies when using iPads. So let's see if this works. Yeah. So I'll quickly go through the research, the rationale aims, methodology, and some of the major findings, which were very surprising, and talk about the implications that may have for both regional education as well as overall teaching and learning in high schools. So when it comes to education and technology, it's a topic that has a lot of interest for many years, and there have been quite different views as to the impact that technology may have on education and student learning. And there have been some pretty big claims that have been made that technology can revolutionize education. Now, as a sort of result of that, there's been an increase in the use of technology in schools, with many policy documents outlining the need to have technology in classrooms, and those expectations don't often meet the reality. So much of the research that was out there when this project began was very much focused on individual students. So there was a need for a larger scale study. And so what I was looking at was the impact of the iPad as an educational school, looking at it from a variety of year levels, from foundation to year 12, but also looking at the views of teachers, students, and parents, as well as any sort of gender differences that might have come as a result of the use. Just briefly, the conceptual framework in relation to teachers was basically linked to do they do what they say they do, and what sort of levels of sophistication can we see in how they're using technology. So again, just very quickly, we had these phases in the study in that it started off looking a bit of a chat with the principal to get a feel for what was going on, then interviews with the teachers that then guided the student and parent questionnaires, and then in the final phase, the classroom observations. And data collection, we had interviews, questionnaires, and obviously the observations from a co-educational independent school in the outer southeast of Victoria. So I'll be focusing just on the teacher participants at this time. And as you can see, we had a variety of teachers with a huge amount of different experiences. Some teachers had only been in the field for 2 years, others had been teachers for close to 20 years. We had some from English and mathematics. Again, I've just put in the genders of the teachers just for interest. In the interviews, they're all semi-structured, and I asked the teachers questions about their attitudes to technology and then their attitudes to iPads. Again, surprisingly different answers came from those. I asked them about their pedagogical strategies and choices, what sort of professional development they'd received related to the introduction of iPads, and what they believed student attitudes were. So to start off with, it was interesting that most of the teachers in the study actually were very enthusiastic about technology in education. And pretty much all of them said that they enjoyed technology, they thought it was great, and that it could benefit students. There were some teachers that were a little bit hesitant, and these tended to be the older teachers. And one in particular, an English teacher at the time, had said that because exams needed to be written, they were not a huge fan of using technology too often. But when asked about the iPad in particular and how their pedagogy had changed since the introduction, most of the teachers weren't able to answer this question. There was a lot of pauses, and a lot of them said that they hadn't really changed their pedagogy as such. And some said they hadn't changed it at all. The last point I thought was an interesting one, that the teachers felt they needed to be more entertaining. And that will come into play later when I discuss what was actually going on in the classrooms. When asked for benefits for students, it was interesting that very few of the teachers actually mentioned any sort of educational benefits. They focused mainly on things around student organisation, not having to lug home textbooks, but many of them spoke about difficulties that students had with using iPads as educational tools. Many students found them to be an extension of their game playing, and teachers were already having a lot of issues with student disengagement in class and them playing games rather than doing the work they needed to do. But interestingly, some teachers did say the only benefit they could see was that they weren't lugging home textbooks. So that was a little bit concerning. But then after having a look at the interviews, and we surveyed students and parents, we used those findings to do some observations. Now, it was interesting when it came time to do the observations, most of the teachers couldn't see the point. They'd said that they didn't use their iPads in the classroom. 3 teachers actually said that their iPads had been put in a drawer and they had not been touched since I'd seen them last. but they were happy for me to come in to have a look at what the students were doing with the iPads. So all the observations were organized, and I sat at the back of the classroom, and students didn't actually know why I was there and didn't really look because they were too busy looking at their iPads. One of the interesting things here is that the views that the teachers had presented initially were not obvious in the classroom observations. So I'm just going to go through some of the lessons briefly and talk about some of the things that happened that I think we as educators need to be aware of when students are using technology. So for this particular Year 5 maths lesson, some of the students were using iPads, but it was interesting that the ones who were using iPads had a lot of difficulty. And the teacher had given them a mathletics task, which is an online maths task that actually didn't work on the iPad. So there was a lesson that was not particularly successful, and a lot of the students actually didn't get any work done. And I thought that might have been a one-off. But unfortunately, it did get a little bit worse. In a Year 7 maths lesson, I'm not sure if the teacher deliberately chose to do this because I was there, but she asked the students to open up an app that would enable them to write. Didn't tell them which one, but the students all opened something up. And she would write an example on the board, students would copy it down, and then clear the page, let's do another one. And they spent about 15 minutes copying stuff off the board, then deleting it off their iPad and doing another. Then they were told to go and do some work. And the students said, well, we don't know what to do because we don't have any of the examples. So the teacher basically had to repeat the whole lot and get the students to write in their textbook. So that wasn't a great start. And after that, a lot of the students were off task, they were distracted, and it wasn't a very successful lesson afterwards. Again, another Year 7 maths lesson, the students were seen looking at photos and just playing around and not actually doing any work. But it was interesting that the teacher didn't realize what was going on. And this happened again in another Year 8 maths classroom. I sat at the back of the classroom and watched a couple of boys playing games through an entire double session. And they were quick. They were able to get out of that game when the teacher was walking around, and they actually did no work at all. Girls were seen looking at photos, but for a double lesson, very little got done. And it was surprising that the teacher was not able to see what was going on here. Same thing happened in an English class. It was an interesting one where students were given the choice to have paper or an iPad for taking notes. And the students who were using the iPad were typing with 2 fingers, but actually had trouble when they got to the end of the page, weren't able to continue filling in the table and did end up with paper afterwards. And one more quickly here, this Year 10 English class, PDFs had been emailed to students. Students weren't able to open them. And the teacher's response was, I'm not going to bring paper copies of everything. If the iPad doesn't work, go to IT and get it fixed. It's not my job to fix iPads. So it gives you a feel for the attitude of teachers. So again, most of the teachers, although they had positive attitudes to technology, that wasn't demonstrated in the class. Lots of behaviour management and off-task activities being observed. All substitution tasks, so the iPads were just really base level reading PDFs or accessing textbooks, no innovation being seen, lots of gaming, lots of photos, and very little PD had been done. So the teachers were not impressed. But the interesting thing was at the end of that, the iPads were then ditched and then they went back to laptops. So it wasn't great. But we as educators need to take advantage of the affordances of technology and not just put them into classrooms because they're there. So if you've got any questions, feel free to let me know, but I will stop talking now because I'm pretty sure I've just hit my 10 minutes. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Janelle. It is time for questions, and I'm just going to share my big questions. There you go. So you've all had a little bit of time to think of some of the questions that you might have for our excellent panelists today. So we've been talking about using innovative strategies and technology to increase engagement. And we've also been highlighting the impact of social factors such as urban normativity and capitalism, both on what we teach and how we teach it. So does anyone have a question that they'd like to kick off this Q&A session with?
I have a question. Sorry, I'd be quicker if I could find my hand, but if that's okay. I'm interested for Janelle, wrote in the comment, as a parent, it's not really surprising to hear that children or the students played games the entire lesson and, you know, the technology failed. So therefore, again, the learning was interrupted. Did you sort of have any thoughts on, because obviously technology is our way of the future, but it clearly isn't being effectively used in the classroom. Did you sort of have any quick sort of simple strategies to help improve this?
Well, at that particular school, the biggest issue was that the technology had been introduced without any sort of teacher teacher views. The laptops were taken away from teachers and iPads were given. There was no professional development provided that was useful. They were basically told, here's an iPad, off you go. And so the teachers found that very difficult. The professional development that they had been provided with, most teachers found to be quite useless. It was really generic and it was, you know, how to use the iPad. So focused professional development that was specifically linked to the subject being taught was what most of these teachers needed, but most of them just went back to traditional paper and pen because they weren't able to justify the use of technology. They could see that it wasn't helping students at all. So I wish there were a quick fix to it. I'm not really sure.
No,
and with
it's
AI
interesting.
now,
Exactly.
I think there's a bigger need for many schools to also go back to those traditional methods to ensure that students are actually doing something. With AI being able to do work for them, how do we know what students are learning?
Thank you. It's very interesting.
I've even had that same experience in my class with the students on laptops, where I've realised I've set them an activity to do, looking for occupational therapy equipment for someone, and I've realised that there's a group in the corner choosing dresses for a formal event that they're planning to attend. So it's actually it's a real problem of how do we, they've got a whole computer in their hands. How do we keep them on task? It's a real challenge.
Yeah, it is very difficult, and especially if you're teaching online. And as was mentioned before, when you can't see any faces, you have no idea what the students are doing, and you call on them and you get no response. So it is really hard.
I think this idea of gamification looks like it worked really well. I've had problems this year where I love using competitions in my class because it seems to me people get really engaged, but I have been criticised by some of my colleagues that it could be demotivating for students who maybe aren't as proficient and don't win. Have you had anyone say anything like that to you, Ashad?
Sorry.
Is Ashad still here?
I'm not sure if it's still here.
There he is. Ashad, I'm sorry, I've written down the wrong name. Ashad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. So because my weekly activities is not part of the assessment, so that's why probably those who don't like, they don't just engage maybe, but those who like, they liked it very much, who wants to really spend their time. Some students are honestly most focusing on the assessment driven, so they just want to do the assessment. So to address that, I also make some of the assessment related to the weekly activities directly. So I said that if you do this one, your assessment will be just a little bit extra component. So it means that if you are doing these weekly activities, you are halfway through of your assessment. So in that case, it also engagement is enhanced. But because there is no reward in terms of competition, but still students feel that someone may be more jealous or more enthusiastic to engage, so they do quickly, but someone just happy to complete those tasks and see how much time they're spending on that. So, but at the end, the system give them badge or some stickers or something like that, so they someone who are keen on that. But so far I haven't get any complaint in terms of having that in the form of competition. Thank you.
Okay, well, I have another one because Kim was talking about one of my passion areas, which is building a rural ready health workforce. And one of my problems is that convincing universities to include regional content in programs that are the majority are taught in cities, we're often seen as not quite as important to be included. Have you got a solution for that, Kim?
Off the top of my head, no, I haven't, tell you the truth. But I think it's important that we do address that within the content of the subject, especially, as I say, in healthcare, because we don't know where people are going to go and work, whether it's for a short period of time to cover people on leave, or or further in their careers and they want to move full time into a regional area. I think when we're looking at the content that we're developing, I think we need to be mindful to encourage or include issues that they may have in the regions, or actually go out there or speak to people and ask them what they find is challenging, and then try and include that. And I think actually making the links with the hospitals, the paramedics, the police and things like that, and actually getting them to talk about some of the communication issues that they have and things like that will make that link stronger with the regions. So the regional areas feel that we're including them in our delivery of the subject and the topics. And also engage those students more, because I do feel that sometimes if we have students that do join online from a regional area, I think sometimes they feel that they are disadvantaged because so much is focused on the metro areas. Do you know what I mean? So I think the more we can broaden students' knowledge base and include the challenges that they have, is going to be beneficial to everybody and the course and the subject matter. Is it an easy fix? No, I don't think it is, because one, you've got to try and engage these people to join the topic. I mean, communication is communication in nursing, paramedic, dietitians and things like that. You still need to have those sort of skills and develop those. So some things can go across different professions, but it is challenging to actually get us to the point where it's equal. I don't think it will ever be equal in as much as the content from a metro perspective to a regional is exactly the same. But I think we need to start building it and bringing it a lot more into the subject throughout the whole curriculum. Do you know what I mean? So I know for this subject that I was teaching, it's on Teach Out, so it's going to be taught out semester 2, 2025, but then it's going to be integrated into the other courses within paramedicine. And hopefully within those courses, we can start still building on this regional aspect as well. So it goes through the whole of that course and the subjects. Is it a fix? I don't know. It's a start.
Particularly as universities have corporatized more, we have become a lot more urban centric, a lot more focused on producing a worker rather than necessarily a well-rounded, well-educated human, which I think leads into a little bit of what Donna was saying in terms of the corporatization of universities, where there's this sort of competition between what else is happening in the world and trying to get our students on track. And so that kind of leads me to the question, what's the difference between student engagement and entertainment, which I think we've sort of touched on a little bit here for everyone. And that's a question to the whole group, not poor Kim on her own to solve. What's the difference between engagement and entertainment, and how do we sort of walk that line?
That's a hard question, I think. You know what I mean? Because you need to get their interest, don't you? That's the point of when they're joining these tutorials, engaging with them is sparking this interest, but you want them to want to know more about it. Entertainment is light-hearted, I think, and take it or leave it. But I think when we're engaging with students, giving them examples, relating the theory, you know, by having guest speakers, for me, having guest speakers talk about the experiences on the road in these regional areas will broaden the knowledge base. So it's not entertainment, because they will remember it, hopefully, and take that with them and consider that when they are actually working with volunteers or working in across the borders, they'll take that and remember it, where entertainment, they might forget. It's not, they might not value it as much as what hopefully this engagement will. That's from what I can say. I don't know what the others think about that.
I think we're expected to be a bit more entertaining now, and that there's good reasons why, because students who are enjoying themselves and are finding things interesting will learn more. But I think it is a concern when we're expected to be super entertaining because we don't have an attendance policy. And therefore, it's being put on us that, you know, we make the classes worthwhile for them to come. And in our faculty, I don't think we're allowed to make anything compulsory. And since we've had that policy, we've seen reducing attendance. And I know that not all courses have that. I don't think in paramedicine that you have that, but in the Faculty of Arts and Education, we certainly do. And as people have got wind of it, that you don't have to go to anything, they've been going to less and less. For the first couple of years, they didn't have wind of it, and only some of them did, and they were scared. But I think it puts too much onus on us being entertaining, that we're somehow worth it. It's fun. Whereas I think you can have the attendance policy and still be entertaining, but the onus isn't put on you. And I think, yes, Harriet, there's a lot of research in the field of higher education, learning and teaching that says that there's a direct correlation between attendance and success. So getting a good mark or finishing your degree or whatever. So I'm not quite sure why we have that extra hurdle here. And we always get told if we question it that it's an industry-wide trend. But for the purposes of this study, I've looked up handbooks, websites, courses at other universities, and I find that it is not an industry-wide trend. But some universities are saying you must attend 90% or you'll fail. And 90% I think is quite high. I used to be at Western Sydney University. We had an 80% attendance requirement for tutorials. And I tell you what, they were good tutorials. You could do a lot of stuff in those tutorials because everybody was coming every week. And your ability to create a learning community was heightened because of it. So that's my rant. That's like how
Attention economy, which people like Google and Facebook and all those Meta, whoever they are, have hundreds and hundreds of employees trying to find ways to grab people's attention and expecting us as teachers to be equally proficient at that is asking a lot. So yeah, that's a really, it's been such an interesting conversation today. And I agree with you, Donna, when you've got a lovely full group of people there, the teaching and the learning is so much more rich than when particularly if you show up online and there's two people and you're like, how are we going to share experiences here? But I think we've come to the end of our time today. So thank you so much for engaging in this session. I'm sure that our presenters will be available for anyone who wants to pop them an email asking any further questions. And if you could please take a few minutes to fill in the form that has just been popped into the chat. That would be very much appreciated by the organisers, or you can use the QR code here. I always find the link easier when I'm on my computer. But you could win a $30 Visa gift card, and coming up to Christmas, that'd be pretty handy. So thank you everyone for coming along, and I hope you're coming to some more of these sessions over the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.